slide, I say, yes, it is a good time. It is a time to finally buy. But I argue you should use if you're a buyer, use what I call a 3 to 5% seller concession offer strategy. And I might even tweak that and say, use a 2 to 5% seller concession offer strategy. Now, let me explain what I mean by that phrase. First of all, understand something known as a sold trend. What is a sold trend? Well, a sold trend is where you look at recent real estate activity, recent closings in a market, and you can look at this on various MLS systems, or we look at this here in the Coachella Valley. There's a desert housing report where we can see sold trends from month to month. A sold trend is the ratio of list price to sold price. Now, what you can see in a lot of markets, and we're seeing that here in the Coachella Valley as well as in Southern California as a whole, we are starting to see more cases where homes are selling for something approaching list price, but a little bit below. Sometimes 1.5% to 2% below list price, sometimes 3 or 4%, maybe as much as 5% below list price. So in other words, that sold trend, that ratio of list price to sold price is more often being seen in that range of homes selling between, say, 95 to 98% of their list price. That's important to recognize because that's an opportunity. If you're a home buyer and you're out there looking at homes and you see a home that's been on the market now, active listing, maybe for approaching 30 days or 40 days or 45 or 50 days, and if you see that it's still an active listing and you don't see that there's been any price adjustments made by the seller and their listing agent after that period of time on the MLS system, that's an opportunity. So let me show you how. For example, if you're looking at using a conventional loan, conventional conforming loan, and you're going to have a down payment that's going to be less than 10%. The first thing to understand is there is a limit as to how much concession you can negotiate from the seller. That limit is going to be 3% of the purchase price or your offer price in this case. So just understand if you're putting less than 10% down, you can request or negotiate a seller concession, but the amount you can negotiate to get from the seller has to be no more than 3% of your offer price. And what if you're successful getting that 3% in your offer price? Well, how would you use it? Well, of course, one thing that most people do all the time is they just submit an offer 3% below the list price. They offer lower price. And I've said before, yeah, that's fine. That's the most common thing that buyers do. Home's not sold. It's 40 days in the market. I'm going to offer not 800. I'm going to offer, 775. I'm just going to take 3% right off the top because it must be priced too high. Well, I would argue that's not your best approach. Get the concession amount, but don't just take it off the price because that's going to give you some benefit if you're financing your purchase by lowering your payment somewhat. But remember, every $1,000 less borrowed is only $6 a month in lower payment. So it's not as powerful as other ways to use that 3% concession. If you get that 3% concession, don't just take a price reduction. Instead, ask for that concession as a credit from the seller and then use it. Use it for what? Your loan. You can either permanently buy down your mortgage rate, or you can use it for a temporary buy down, such as a 2-1. Remember I said a 2-1 buy down typically costs about 2.25% of your loan amount, which of course, if it's 2.25% of your loan amount and you're putting 20% down, then that as a percentage of the purchase price, which is what the concession limit is based on, is even less than 2.25%. And so if you do that, you can either use the 3% to permanently buy down the rate, use all of the concession, the 3% concession just for that purpose. Or if you're going to use it for a 2-1 temporary buy down, there's going to be leftover money from that 3% concession. Use that to apply towards your closing costs. So that way you're getting both a reduction in your payment schedule for the next couple of years, and you're getting a reduction in your cash to close because you're using that 3% concession for both the rate buy down and for some of your closing costs. So that's what you would do when you're putting less than 10% down. Now, if you're getting a conventional loan, conforming loan with 10% down, or if you're getting an FHA loan even with a minimum 3.5% down payment, the concession limit's much higher. It's 6% of the purchase price, not 3%. That's a good bucket of money that can be used very effectively to greatly improve your financing terms over just requesting a lower purchase price in your offer. With a 6% seller concession, and maybe you don't think you can get 6% out of the seller, but as I would argue, based on sold trends, you might certainly be able to get 5%. So whether it's 5% or 6%, focus on the fact that get that concession not in a price reduction if you're financing your purchase, get it as a credit, and then use that effectively to improve your financing terms, such as you can then use that 6% also for a permanent rate buy down. But understand you can only do that to a certain level, because the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, the CFPB, they do have a limit on points and fees that are allowed to be paid on a mortgage transaction. And that's true whether it's paid for by the seller or for the buyer. And that's generally right around 3%. So if you're getting a seller concession that's 5 to 6% of the purchase price, you can only select a rate, a permanent rate buy down to a level where the cost is not going to exceed about 3% of the loan amount because of the CFPB limit. So then what do you do with all this extra money? Well, in my opinion, you're better off either using that for the permanent rate buy down as far as you can go, and then take the balance of that, apply it towards your closing costs, although make sure that the remaining portion of being applied to your closing costs doesn't exceed the actual cost, because they cannot. They can only be applied to actual closing costs that you're incurring. But a better approach, I think, is use the 6%, or maybe even if it's a 5% seller concession. Don't get it in a price reduction. Get it in a credit from the seller. Use it for a 3-2-1 buy down. 3-2-1 buy down gets your first year rate at current rate levels in the threes. That's what buyers are longing for. They want to get back to the threes. You can get that now through a 3-2-1 buy down. Yes, it's temporary, but remember, the 3-2-1 buy down provides you that below market rate in the threes the first year, in the fours the second year, in the fives the third year. You don't get to your actual note rate in the sixes till the fourth year. You've got a 3-year window enjoying that below market rate and payment schedule to look for that opportunity to refinance your note rate into a much lower rate. That's why a buy down is such a great idea. It gets you into a home now, so you can take advantage of future appreciation. It gives you a below market rate and payment schedule for 3 years. And then you're set up to have that window to look for a refi opportunity, get that note rate down for long term. And again, even with the 3-2-1, which generally costs around 4.25%, 4 3/8% of your loan amount, if you get a 5 or 6% concession out of the seller, use the rest of that toward covering your other remaining closing costs, so it reduces your overall cash to close. So again, I can't harp on this enough. There is opportunities to get some seller concessions right now, depending on the age of the listing. Don't just knee-jerk go for the price reduction. Be more strategic. Get with us. Get with your own lender if you've got one. If you're an agent, you got a preferred lender. Talk to your lender. Talk to us. We can give you better ideas about how to use that seller concession towards your buyer's financing, or you, the buyer's financing situation, to greatly improve your financing terms. I really, really think this is what people should focus on to get into the housing market now, get into home ownership, and then take advantage of future appreciation that we all think is probably going to occur. So hopefully that makes some sense for you. I hope it does. And again, if you have any interest in finding out more about this, or would like to talk about certain numbers, I'm happy to provide those to you on a particular situation. So just give me a call, call me or email me, and I'll be happy to do that.